Hi, I'm Aria. Welcome to our book club video series, Composting, Competition, and Moving Towards Compersion, where my Metamours, Salina, May, and I discuss Marie Thouin's new book, What is Compersion? So today we're digging into Chapter 1, Developing a Non-Mononormative Relationship to Jealousy as a Foundation for Compersion. In this chapter, Marie explores how consensually non-monogamous people typically engage with jealousy in intentional ways in a phenomenon she calls non-mononormative jealousy. And just for some definitions to kick us off, mononormativity refers to the societal assumption and preference that monogamy, or having a single, exclusive romantic and sexual partner, is the natural, ideal, and expected form of a committed relationship. So developing a non-mononormative relationship with jealousy means not assuming that jealousy is the natural response to any physical or emotional intimacy outside of a committed relationship, and moving away from the assumption that monogamy is our sole option and the only moral way to do relationships. So there's a lot of unlearning to be done here before we can even begin to move towards feelings of compersion or feeling joy in witnessing our partner getting romantic, intimate, or emotional pleasure from someone who is not us. So I'm excited to dig in today with Salina to share a little bit more about where we're both at on our own journeys of unlearning mononormativity and learning to work with the jealousy that arises when practicing consensual non-monogamy. Hi, Salina.
Yay! Hi, Aria.
Are you ready to talk about jealousy?
My favorite topic.
Amazing. Well, I thought we could start with a little meditation on befriending jealousy as we get started. Does that feel like an okay place to start?
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay. You want to just close your eyes, soften your gaze, maybe take a couple deep breaths. Inhaling through the nose, maybe a nice big open mouth sigh. With each exhale, just releasing the day, whatever you were doing before. Just bring a little awareness to your body, maybe starting at your toes, scanning upwards, noticing any sensations, any areas of tightness. Just inviting relaxation and ease into every part of your body. Softening the belly and the chest, the jaw, the space behind the eyes, your brow. Just imagine yourself rooted in a safe, peaceful place in nature. Maybe feel the wind on your face, some fresh air. Just envision jealousy as a small glowing orb, maybe somewhere close to your body, close enough that you can notice the color, the texture, the temperature, and just observe how this orb makes you feel. Notice any thoughts that might arise. Just staying curious and open here. If you want to put a hand on your heart or your belly and just send a little warmth and compassion to this feeling, recognizing that jealousy is a natural emotion, signaling that something within you needs attention. Thank this orb for bringing new awareness. And as you focus on it, just imagine the orb gently changing into a symbol of growth and understanding, maybe a flower or a beam of light. And just notice if you sense any relief or acceptance when imagining jealousy as a teacher and as something malleable. Maybe silently repeat this affirmation. I honor my jealousy as a guide to deeper understanding. I embrace it with compassion and allow it to lead me towards growth and connection. Bring your awareness back to your breath. Maybe wiggle your fingers and your toes, roll your shoulders, just slowly awakening the body. Let's see if we can carry this compassion and awareness into our conversation.
Thank you. It was so sweet.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
In the opening line of this chapter, Marie writes that jealousy is a universal human experience. In its simplest interpretation, it is a survival mechanism that serves to guard and protect one's access to valued relationships from perceived intruders. So in a mononormative framework, I would very much be considered the perceived intruder on the marriage between you and Justin. And some people might even justify you wanting to do me harm as a result of my relationship with him. And I'm curious, as we think about this idea of jealousy as a survival mechanism that serves to guard and protect what you value, does anything come up for you?
Aria, don't play with your questions.
Let's jump in the deep end.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It feels tender, and there's like even maybe like a little judgment or shame that comes up. But I'm like, yeah, I'm protective. Like, I'm protective. And like, as a trauma survivor, as a woman of color who's been fired multiple times, as like a woman who's been cheated on multiple times, as someone who has have very lived experiences of competition that was really harmful, many instances of trust being broken, most of which happened outside of my marriage, it makes sense for me to be protective. You know, I think back to some of my earlier Metamours relationships in which I was very unskillful, Justin was very unskillful, and that my Metamours was unskillful. There was very much an underlying feeling of competition. And ultimately, Justin broke up with both of those women, and me and him remained. And Justin decided, you know, at the time he was very oriented around non-hierarchical polyamory and wanted to have multiple relationships. And then he kind of shifted towards his truth that he doesn't have capacity to do that. And in that, I was the person who remained, and I was the only one left standing. Competition is so loaded, but there can be tug of war sometimes over resource. You know, my mom and dad had 6 kids together. My stepdad, when he married my mom, brought 2 more. My dad remarried, had 4 more children. So my biological dad is the parent of 10. And on one hand, I feel like coming from a big family, there's this like feeling of like more love, more connection. There's like a way I'm really oriented towards a polyamorous relationship. And in my earliest experiences, there was a lot of reality of struggle of resource. Most of my half-siblings all went to private schools where there was a reality of the 6 of us who were already established needing and wanting some of both financial resources, the time, the dedication. And my dad has a very, bless him, like there's enough of me to go around. And I think I've had very real experiences where that's not the case. So my stepmom coming into the picture and that actually feeling really harmful. Like she was, again, bless her, so many things I love about her. And her relationship with my dad was, they're going through a divorce right now, actually. But for all of the years they were together, I want to honor my reality that much of my life, there's been like a desire to protect. And it's been needed. And I still feel sometimes very hesitant to open up and share this beautiful labor of love and beautiful marriage that Justin and I have cultivated. That's the most precious thing. So I'm not so easy to come to a place of trust, to come to a place of openness, to come to a place of sharing. And I think for me, I'm really questioning, what do I really need to be demonstrated in a healthy way that it's safe to open up the most precious thing in the world and share it?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also come from a family that was blended. I had a stepmom who had 2 kids, and I had a step brother and sister for a little bit, and then my dad got divorced again, and so they went away. So it's interesting to think about those early childhood modelings of family and love, and having family members who were there and then they were gone. It all definitely affects us. So I think the way I think about it from a somatic perspective is, if jealousy is the knee-jerk reaction that society teaches us is normal to embody, I think about this idea of a non-mononormative approach to jealousy as recognizing that clenching, contraction, fear, and finding ways to work with that somatic shaping and finding more intentional strategies to create safety in our nervous system and care for our relationships and our metamours that aligns with our values of freedom and sacred autonomy. And it's such a practice, and it goes against everything that society teaches us is the natural response to someone having an emotional romantic connection with the person that is most precious to us. And it makes so much sense that it's not a natural response to be like, oh yeah, welcome to my marriage, get in here. Make yourself at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all these things kind of hold hands together. It's like jealousy, the somatic response that feels really protective, my trauma response that's like a response to my personal history of being in a big family with very little resource and actually feeling a very real sense of competition.
Yeah.
And I think that's like kind of the thing I want to honor. And I get really curious about, for me, is like honoring the very real reality sometimes around a competition of resource. As someone who's identified as polyamorous for many, many, many years, it's like always my practice to open, create space for my feelings, whatever they are, jealousy included, and work towards creating enough safety so that I, first of all, can even discern. So often I know that I can come from my place of fear, and I'm just projecting that without actually really getting grounded in the facts. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm trying to balance that with what really are the conditions, the way, the trust that's like built. And I think you're a wonderful example of that for me, of somebody who I feel such a sense of trust and safety and real friendship and like family, and that allows me to step into a place of collaboration and the vulnerability to work with the somatic response. I trust you to take care of my vulnerability. I think that's such an important piece. Like, I think in the past I've maybe moved really blindly towards collaboration without actually having some of those conditions that I think are necessary.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I have definitely had Metamour relationships that were so jealousy inducing. And it's like, okay, let's not do that again. No, thank you. Yeah, and have had some really beautiful Metamour relationships over the years where it's like, oh, there's such an opportunity for what just feels like sacred sisterhood and really creating an atmosphere of teamwork, which for me has been the best way to move through the jealous feelings and just be like, okay, knowing someone's intentions and understanding their values and the shape of their life. And definitely have had Metamours in the past that I didn't feel like there was a lot of respect for my marriage, or it felt like that they had an unspoken agenda and maybe were wanting my nesting partner to be their nesting partner, but weren't saying that. And so I think there's all these different ways that we can either like reinforce the jealousy and really have real things to be afraid of. I guess my hope with our relationship is just keep building trust and finding ways to create more safety, and it's a process.
Amen.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting how Marie explored the way that jealousy varies from culture to culture, and the meaning that we make of it is malleable. And you spoke to a little bit, but in your big Mexican American family, was there any like specific cultural modeling of how to express jealousy? Was that something explicit?
The first thing that comes to my mind, especially coming from a big family that sometimes or often was in survival mode, my mom was like, we don't have time for your feelings. Honestly. And I think that sometimes jealousy can be perceived as passionate. And I think Mexican culture has a lot of passion. This is also my experience, so I don't want to speak to like Mexican culture on a whole, but it's my experience. The like kind of toxic masculinity, machismo that sometimes could be woven through like an expression of passion in the ways that like patriarchy is embedded and can kind of have this energy of like possessiveness. I think I could see examples of that. There wasn't a lot of permission for me to come forward with like my own feel, like especially as like one of 10 children. If I had complaints or like frustrations with resources or not getting enough, I often was met with like, well, when I was your age, we had to walk to school uphill, no car, like just like and I get it, again, also family being in survival mode. So a lot of invalidation of like if I were to express my experience of jealousy. Yeah, I'm curious for you as a young person and growing up in your family, what it was like both to like for you to express your jealousy, but then also maybe what you saw modeled.
Yeah. I mean, my parents were divorced in elementary school, and my dad moved to Montana, and my mom was very much a single mom with a bagel shop on Main Street in this small town.
Aww.
Which
bagel
was
shop.
Super sweet. Yeah. Yeah, super cute cafe on Main Street, which was very much the center of small town gossip. But as a result, a lot of my mom's time and energy and resources were like managing the business, making sure her employees were there on time. And I think as a result, I definitely grew up really fast and became like another head of the household, cooking for my brothers and taking on a lot of projects as a young person. And my mom was also a closeted lesbian for the first 60 years of her life. So talking about feelings and needs and desires was not something that we did. So yeah, I don't have a lot of memories of ever sharing jealousy or talking about feelings. And it definitely was something I learned much later in life. Not a lot of modeling of how to share feelings in a healthy way growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I think coming from mainstream American culture, there is just so much unlearning to do around how to work with it in a healthy way.
Totally. I mean, it's fascinating because I feel like often when I tell people I'm non-monogamous, they're like, oh, I could never do that. I'm too jealous. And I'm like, I'm fucking jealous. It's like, I think for me, jealousy isn't always the word that rings true. For me, it's much more like I'm insecure in my attachment. And I like struggle with managing my insecure attachment that arises.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, I'm curious. On page 22, Marie talks about 5 different categories of jealousy, and maybe some of this is that insecure attachment, but I'm curious if there's a particular flavor of jealousy that feels most familiar to you. She says there's possessive jealousy that arises when one assumes exclusive possession of a love object. There's the fear jealousy, fear of being rejected or replaced by someone else. There's competition jealousy, which is rooted in comparison and feelings of inadequacy. There's ego jealousy, fear of being judged and having one's pride hurt. Or exclusion jealousy, feeling left out or deprived of equitable time and attention. Do any of those ring truer for you than other ones?
Do you want to answer this one first?
Sure. It was interesting to kind of read through this and like think back on my history of non-monogamy and jealousy. And I think when I think about the fear jealousy, that definitely arose when Sky had his first kink partner. There was a part of me that when we kind of discovered that he had this whole kinky side of him that had been suppressed when it emerged and when he really wanted to engage with it, I think I felt fear that he's going to find someone who can meet him in this. And he's going to decide, oh, that's who I want to be with. So that was something that definitely felt familiar. And then I think the exclusion jealousy part, Sky took another partner to Burning Man 2 summers ago. And that definitely evoked the feeling of like, what about me?
Yeah.
And I decided I didn't want to go on that trip and was able to recognize like, ooh, I am feeling a lot of jealousy, seeing him bend over backwards to prepare this whole big experience for her. And there was a little bit of the justice jealousy in there, which Jessica Fern and David Cooley describe as seeing your partner do something that maybe you've been asking for or wanting that suddenly they have capacity to do with someone else. And I knew I could not be home when they came back from this trip. I was like, I am not going to be able to have compersion seeing them returning and unloading all of this into our backyard. And And so I took myself to Grass Valley to give myself my own little vacation and meet my needs for travel and new experiences. And yeah, I guess that was last summer. And that was actually when I connected with Justin on Field for the first time, which is an interesting turn of events. It was like, okay, I cannot be here. I'm going to go have my own experience. And I guess silver lining is meeting Justin, us connecting. And now here we are.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. Where I am in my polyamorous journey and my journey with compersion is I'm not there yet. There's moments where I have compersion. I'm very much like working towards it. And I want to give a lot of permission to not, when we are feeling sad or feeling envious or having our own need that's not being met, how really hard it is to feel compersion. It's tender and painful, and really is this like deep spiritual practice of being able to be like, can I sit with this longing? Can I sit with my desire? Can I sit with my envy?
Totally. It's uncomfortable.
It's fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, don't love that. But okay, we're going to breathe through it and figure out how to get my needs met in other ways. And
such a big part of this for me is the acceptance that things change, life changes, our relationship changes, and a real willingness to be with that. And even to be at a phase where like, wow, at one point or another, we were doing this together and now we're not. I just have a lot of respect for the capacity in your heart to be with this.
Yeah, easier some days than others. It's like such a practice. Return to the meditation, return to the gratitude practice. Know that everything has its time and place and is a season, and like nothing is fixed. Not being attached to it and just being like, okay, this is what's happening now, and things are going to keep unfolding and changing.
I love that.
Yeah. Any other reflections on those 5 different jealousy types for you?
You know, I was thinking Justin has a twin, and especially in his, say, for the first 3 to 4 years of being with Justin, he had some ideas like, I'll never get married, I'll never live with someone. He would talk about, when I first met him, he was like, oh yeah, me and my brother are gonna get a house together. He had a really different orientation towards marriage. We, now live together, we're married. In that era, I absolutely felt exclusion. I would say exclusion was like a really big part of it. Injustice, jealousy of like, they planned a lot of mountain biking trips together multiple times a year. Justin and I weren't doing that. Also, I was a broke school teacher at the time and didn't have the time off, flexibility in my schedule. I didn't have the money. So those are really hard to contend with. And I think what I learned through that experience, which now I'm applying as I, in this era of my life, is you gave this example so beautifully in talking about when Sky went to Burning Man and you were able to go to Grass Valley and nurture yourself and then connect with Justin on Field. It's like trusting that divine timing, trusting that we are where we're supposed to be, trusting that there are some experiences that Justin has that are not meant for me. And I think through his mountain biking, like he's on a 4-week mountain biking trip right now. I've learned completely to be like, okay, go have fun. Like, miss him, but I don't wish I was with him. I've like learned like that's his thing he gets to do by himself. That I think I've arrived at a different place. But when I was dating Anthony, my ex-partner, and he was married to his wife, I felt very envious of the contact that she had with him, of being able to contact him, like, be in this kind of everyday relationship, where for us, and the reality of him being a dad of 2, was that it was very hard to make plans. So I might see him sometimes once a month, maybe 4 if we're lucky and our schedules align. But that was something I felt really envious of. But I think less and less as Justin and I build a lot more secure attachment, I think I feel my primal fear that comes up is the fear I'm going to be replaced. And again, like that, those come from a lot of earlier experiences where my dad did get remarried, did have 4 kids, did turn a lot of his resources towards his new family. That's what I experienced. So it's, and that's something I'm really constantly trying to soothe, and then get grounded in the reality that Justin is here and he's present and doesn't have a plan to leave me. And can I lean into the reality that things change? We don't know what's coming. And I'm still going to be okay and can still thrive and still have my own beautiful divine path, even if Justin and I separate. Like that's the place I try to go when I'm feeling the fear arise in me.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting to notice the fear story and be like, okay, am I going to engage in this? Is this the story I want to focus on? How can I shift the awareness and the fear thought loops? But sometimes easier said than done.
Depends how much wine I've had to drink. Just kidding.
Real talk, yeah. So I want to talk about this idea that Marie's research points to the importance of partners explicitly agreeing to becoming safe havens for the expression of jealousy as normal, healthy, acceptable part of the relationship landscape. And she talks about how this might look like making explicit agreements with partners that the other person can safely ask for reassurance when they're experiencing jealousy, and the other one will do their best to meet those requests with compassion and kindness. And I'm curious, in what ways have you and Justin made your own marriage a safe haven for jealousy if it needs to be expressed? And are there things that have made it easier for you to bring jealousy forward when it arises?
Yeah, well, I will say I feel so grateful to have done so much work on my self-love and my self-acceptance and in my own confidence. And, I'm 43, so there's, in my earlier years and more insecure years where I was battling a lot more imposter syndrome, or especially like when I made the shift from being a classroom teacher to a consultant, and it really evoked all of this imposter syndrome for me. That was a harder era to like feel like I could even talk about my insecurity. And I think that in this stage where I have a lot of self-love, it feels easier for me to come forward and be like, oh, like I'm feeling insecure, or I'm feeling envious, or I'm feeling scared. And that's a newer thing, I think, for me to soften somatically, be able to even name, like, I'm feeling this. And I think in the past, I felt both like embarrassment and shame. This part of me too, especially when combating like imposter syndrome, was like, no, I'm secure, I'm fine. And then I would instead like project my anger and blame and do all of that. But it's a really different feeling to soften, like hold my ache, hold my fear, like allow the grief or allow the tenderness to emerge. And something I think that has become one of my favorite parts of polyamory is when partners do that for each other. It's like intimacy building. It's precious. I feel very touched and blessed when someone I care about comes forward and very tenderly reveals themselves. There's no place I'd rather be. And then often it feels pretty easy for me to be like, oh, like, you're perfect. Like, you're just right. Like, I love, from that place. And so I try to practice that. Justin creates a lot of space, and it's been a practice because it's so tender and my protection can come across so fierce. I really have to work to both somatically soften, to positively narrate to myself, and then remember, especially, I will love the intimacy that follows. I will love the closeness that I feel and the way I feel taken care of. And then often it passes. It like doesn't linger because it's like being held by me, it's being held by my partner, or if I'm blessed, a Metamour like you, then it's like it's very precious.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your experience is. Yeah.
I really resonate with that feeling of being validated and seen and like held in the tenderness. I think coming from a family that really didn't talk about feelings and emotions and not having that modeled, like Sky's family is completely the opposite. They talk about everything. They have big feelings. And I think Sky has been really good at really like encouraging my vulnerability to come forward and like praising me when I'm able to speak my challenging feelings out loud and normalizing it. I feel like there was a long time where like I really felt like I had to hide those feelings and play it cool and be like, oh no, nothing, we're good. Like, go have a great time. When underneath I'm like, oh, I so need just to be held. And now it's like being able to be like, oh no, I need something from you, and being able to ask for it and also self-soothe. And I feel like learning how to, recognize my emotions and take care of them, and then also be able to make those vulnerable requests. I feel like it's such a game changer. And I think there's many years where it was just sweeping all of the emotions under the rug.
Girl.
And then it was, oh, cool, let's get some therapists up in here. Let's learn to talk about these things. Let's practice expressing ourselves. And it's been so important to learn how to communicate about the challenging things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're on our last question. How does our jealousy point us in the direction of our own needs?
Yeah, do you want to take a pass at this one first?
Yeah, in terms of the needs, I feel like now I really try to, like, when jealousy arises, really look at it as a source of information instead of being afraid of it or trying to stuff it down or pretend it's not there, and really be like, oh, this is interesting. Let me look at this from all of the angles and hold it up to the light and be like, what is needed here? Why am I feeling this way? What are the parts of me that are getting activated? And I think really bringing curiosity to it instead of the shame and the judgment. I think for so long it was just like, jealousy, oh my God, push it away. And now it's just, okay, hey, jealousy, come sit down and have tea with me. What's up?
Yeah, I love that. Invite your jealousy to tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Bless the capacity that you've cultivated to look at your jealousy and be with it. And I see the growth and what you're sharing of maybe a couple years ago. Probably would have handled this situation with Bex a little bit differently. And now I see you bringing that mindfulness, the curiosity, the presence, the compassion, that you're able to be with it and also then share it with your partners, which is so different than the like, let me stuff it in a corner or like get tangled in shame. I'm curious for me, about like where it points to need. There's both the reflection for me and like, okay, this is my jealousy. What do I need to take care of this? What's happening in me? Let me self-reflect. And then I also think sometimes it can be a mirror for the relationship. There was a period of time where I was feeling jealous of Justin having like excursions or dates. Like, I'm a planner. Justin's not. He, most of the time, just wants to like hang out in the house with someone. He he's an adventurer. So he'll go mountain bike, he'll go hiking, he'll like go by the river. And we do those things. But for a while, I was like feeling jealous then when he would plan dates. It'd be like going out to restaurants. And I'm like, I love to be wined and dined. I was like, why are you not wining and dining me? And then it like occurred to me that I was not planning dates, that I was not inviting him to do those things. And then also Justin doesn't like to do that. It would actually be his preference to like not go to the restaurant, but like in dating culture, often that's like what you do. It's like, I both like kind of had to look at my story, deconstruct it, look at the reality, and also bring in some of that gratitude of like, oh, Justin and I have this beautiful home in Grass Valley with 3 acres where we often get the experience of like getting to be with the trees or be in the river together. This is what we do have. And in the last 5 years, I've been very focused on financial empowerment and like moving through my imposter syndrome and moving from being like a broke ass teacher to someone who can provide security for myself and for my family. And part of that motivation was like, girl, I want to go fancy dinners. I'm going to take my husband. Like, I'm going to pay for them. And so now if I want to go to dinner, I'm like, I got you, honey. I'm going to pay for this. And it's like pointed in the direction too of like, it is a need of mine to like go out and enjoy really good food. And most of my life I've been such a hustler and cooked and cleaned for a big family and done all of that. And when I really get the treat of someone like cooking and cleaning for me, it's like it feels deeply nourishing. So just all of that has been kind of an insightful experience for me of like, what's my role? How do I be more proactive? How do I practice acceptance and gratitude? Where can I like let go actually? I think it was a big mind shift for me when I was like, oh, Justin, it's not like he's really wanting to take women on dinner dates. It's like, that's just kind of the reality of dating culture. And like, can I be grateful for the connection that we do have?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and I love that you're like, yes, this is important to me. I want to get dressed up. I want to look fabulous. I want to go eat my meal. Like, yes, please. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But also how cool that you have a beautiful home that you guys can be together in. And like, if that's his preferred environment, how cool that you can share that with him. And
yeah, there's like a reframe. I think that happens too sometimes. I know for one of the gifts and being polyamorous for me has been this constant reframing and perspective shifting and like really noticing these stories that I have come up and really needing to get clear. It's like, is that actually what's happening? You know, because I can go to the like, you put more time into your other connections and I'm your wife and you should be. And I'm like, okay, like, let's like look at that story. So for me, that curiosity, my trauma survivor pattern is like story, react, wow. You know, and it's been such a practice of being like story, curiosity, compassion, care, reality checking, like what's really happening. Like,
zooming out and being like looking from a different perspective and being like,
yes.
What is the truth? What is like the fear story? And yeah, how can I like shift it to like, instead of thinking about the worst case scenario, to be like, what is like the hopeful, optimistic story? And how can I reframe to focus on something more empowering?
Yes, and that's beautifully said. What's the hopeful? That's the trauma survivor in me, is the catastrophizing. Like, but it's so different to be like, okay, can I, have a hopeful, optimistic view of this?
Yeah, and like not look for the things that are wrong, but be like, okay, what if there's nothing wrong?
Yes, I mean it's hard. I think when there's been other women that possess qualities that I may not have. And I think for me too, that is a mirror, and it's uncomfortable. Like it's uncomfortable to sit with a part of me that's really comparing and then actually view the reality of this girl is more. The reality is she's richer. She's meeting this need that I can't. She's maybe more lighthearted or like whatever the qualities are. Like that to me is a deep acceptance and being willing to look at too. And then accepting of like, is it okay that somebody has some qualities that I don't have? And can I really sit with, I'm still a beautiful, glorious, incredible human being, and that this other person is also an incredible, glorious, beautiful human being, and it doesn't need to take away from me. And sometimes that's still present for me.
Yeah, I mean, our culture totally normalizes that, right? We're socialized to see other women as the enemy and the competition. And for me, where that like comparison used to come up a lot is around women who were kinkier and were going to meet Sky in this new need that he had found, and really just being like, okay, trying to focus on the positives, right? Like, it's great that he's found somebody who wants to go to these events with him. It takes the pressure off of me to go try things, do things that maybe actually don't appeal to me, and permission like not to meet all of our partner's needs. I feel like that's been something I've really tried to work with. Okay, he has all these needs. Those aren't my needs. How can I like release and just be like, okay, great. I'm glad you found a safe person to like go get your needs met with. I'm going to go get my needs met. And they're very different, and honoring that difference and giving each other space to be different humans. And I hear you kind of saying you're practicing that with like Justin and his mountain biking. You're like, I don't want to go on that trip. Go have a great time with your brother. Like, how am I gonna get my needs met while you're away? And yeah, it's a practice.
Yes, and it's easier to do at 43 than it was at 33 or 23. Like, I think so much of the wisdom, and I will say, like, other times in my life when I was experiencing insecurity outside of the relationship, my job, like for years, I was burnt out, stressed, exploited, exhausted, broke, in those states, or like crises happening in my family that created outside insecurity felt a lot harder to access. I think at age 43, I'm experiencing success in a lot of external, so it's easier. But in those moments where I was really struggling, it was a lot harder.
Yeah, I do think that is one of the beautiful things about getting older, is like knowing ourselves more deeply and having more inner stability, more resources definitely makes it easier to feel, okay, I've got me.
Yes.
No matter what else happens, secure in the self. I feel like it's such an important practice of all of this.
Yeah. And I think I'll just name, it's like, I think both of us, we don't have kids. We are choosing not to have kids. That creates a little more, how should I say this? Like freedom. And not being married with children, I can't know the experience of someone who has kids, but thinking about the last relationship that I was in and my partner's wife really struggling with that reality of having less resource. My goal right now is ultimately feeling like my biggest fear is I'm going to lose Justin. I want to confront that fear. If I lose him, I will still thrive. And that's easier for me to lean into as I have more financial resource, as I have success in my career, as I have established, like at age 43, a very strong community, a really strong network. Like I feel like that's been a big part of this. And I think sometimes that's what makes polyamory easier is when we have a really robust life outside of the relationship. And I have a lot of empathy for what I perceive as my ex-partner's wife, feeling maybe a lot more dependent on her partner, and they're feeling a lot more. Is this making sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think so much of our culture is based around the nuclear family and being, this is the one person who's going to meet all of my needs. And if that goes away, like, who is going to be there for me? Which I think, for one, is sad and unrealistic. And like, there's a reason why so many marriages don't survive, because that's a lot of pressure to put on one human. And also, I think that's like the beauty of non-monogamy, is really like widening where we're getting our needs met and having a robust community to catch us and hold us and support us and be with us. And then when we have a partner who's away for 4 weeks mountain biking, then there's like other people to be with you, and yeah, less lonely.
Totally.
Yeah. Are there any other things we haven't talked about that feel important to say about jealousy? I mean, I feel like we could have this conversation all night long, but
I think the only thing I would say, and I kind of said this like in relationship to using that example around like wanting to have like more fancy dinners with my husband. In the past, I'd so quickly go to, you're doing this with this other person, you don't do this with me. I'm like angry about it. That kind of justice, envy, jealousy. And something that I'm really trying to practice now with that like vulnerability and like opening up and softening is also like making a request or exploring. And sometimes it does involve accepting like we just may never have that thing, whether it's like mountain biking or kink or whatever. Like maybe there isn't actually something that could be met, but there might be a need for like, can we have more connection? Like, can we, in the way that we like to experience intimacy together, can we do that? Justin loves grilling here at the house. Like, I may not ask for a fancy dinner, but maybe it's like, can we make dinner together here and like, you know, feel connected with each other? Like, I think that's something for myself I'm really trying to practice instead of contract, anger, push, you should be doing X, Y, and Z, or I'm not enough. You're going to leave me because I'm not enough. Like going in those places, really going to the like, oof, tender, compassion, taking care of, and also really listening. Like, yeah, is there a request that I can make?
Yeah.
And sometimes that feels vulnerable to ask for, but I'm really trying to practice and ask.
Yeah. I think I'm definitely in the same phase too. It's like, okay, how can I be clearer about my needs and proactively making a request instead of assuming my partner's a mind reader and knows what I want and need. And I feel like the clearer we can be on our needs and then like feel confident expressing those, we're much more likely to get our needs met.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the final thing is at the end of the chapter, Marie offers a 5-step roadmap through jealousy, which I'll just describe briefly below. I'm curious if you have any last advice for other people on how to work with jealousy. I think we've talked about almost all of this and it sounds pretty aligned with kind of our approach, but she says, notice, attending to the thoughts, sensations, and feelings as they arise, name it, bringing it forth, and sharing it without fear of being shamed or judged, narrating it, reimagining jealousy as a source of information, navigating needs through communication, boundary setting, emotional attunement to really identify the needs, and then nurturing compersion, like the conscious choice to choose compersive thoughts. Any other things that you would add to that as a roadmap to move through jealousy?
I'm going to sit with that for a moment. Is there anything you would add?
I mean, I think the things that I was thinking about are community. really like widening the scope of care and a deep investment in like our own healing journey.
Yes.
I think those are the two main additions. And then also maybe like really just like practicing like filling up your own cup instead of focusing on the lack. And also just like finding acceptance that jealousy is an emotion that is healthy. It can be a teacher. It's probably never going to fully go away. You would never expect anger or sadness to completely disappear. Sometimes I think in non-monogamous communities, there's this like focus on like jealousy bad. We shouldn't feel jealousy. The more that we can normalize it and just be like, yeah, it's welcome here, and creating space for it is the fastest way for me to transmute it.
Girl, just thinking about what you said, I think it's like, I mean, it's a part of life. Like, I'm thinking about you as a little girl, and your mom is like in her bagel shop, and that's like the center of her world. You know, were you like jealous of her coffee shop, or were you, was I jealous of my siblings? Like, absolutely. And I think it's like a part of life, especially in like our unjust capitalist systems that are not fair, where not everybody gets equal resources. Yes, in a very capitalistic, competitive world, yes, there's going to be very real moments where we're like, I want that. Like, I often feel jealous and envy of Justin's white male privilege. I'm jealous that he, was born into a very wealthy family that I now benefit from and bless that. Like, I'm so grateful. And there were many years where it was very frustrating to be like, I've worked my ass off since I was fucking 14 years old. I've busted my ass in the school system for all of these years. I work 60 hours a week and I still get paid less than you, And this is kind of how I am with polyamory. I don't have any room for the shaming people around very real human hard experiences. And when I hear you share some of these recent experiences, I'm like, ooh, girl, that is hard. Like, that is hard. I'm interested in like, how do I love and accept myself through that? Very real injustices in the world and the way those can sometimes play out in our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to me is like the ferocity around honoring that feels so important to me.
Yeah, it's complex. There's like lots of layers, right?
Mm-hmm.
The personal stuff, the family stuff, the societal stuff, the cultural expectations. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff to muck through and like practice something different.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful to be here practicing with you. Yeah.
Ditto.
Yeah. Should we do a little closing compersion visualization?
Yeah, that sounds lovely, honey.
Okay. So let's just take a moment to close our eyes again. Let's begin by remembering our why for practicing non-monogamy. Maybe it's more freedom, honoring everyone's sacred autonomy, expansion, trust, releasing control. Whatever it is for you, just take a moment to breathe into those values. Begin to visualize your partner in a happy and loving interaction with a mutual friend. Notice the smile on their face, the warmth in their eyes, and the connection that they're experiencing with this other person. Now begin to visualize your partner in a happy and loving interaction with a romantic partner. Just notice if anything shifts as you imagine your partner having a deeper intimate or sexual relationship with someone else. Again, noticing the smile on their face, the warmth in their eyes. And instead of focusing on what mononormative culture says should be feelings of jealousy, just notice if you can focus on the joy and the love your partner is experiencing. Imagine that they're fulfilled and feeling enlivened by this connection. And see if you can root into your own feelings of aliveness and compassion, knowing that your partner is fulfilled. Begin to visualize a warm, glowing light radiating from your heart, filling you with a sense of compassion and joy, really filling up with happiness and contentment, knowing that your partner is experiencing those same emotions. And as you continue to visualize this scene, just imagine the positive impact that this happiness has on your own relationship. Envisioning the ways your partner's fulfillment brings more joy and love and energy and positivity into your own connection. See if you can find gratitude for your partner's relationship with this other person. Try to focus on the benefits this other person brings into both of your lives. And as you feel that warmth and compassion in your heart growing stronger, imagine spreading it through your whole body, enveloping you in comfort, giving you a big embrace. And maybe repeat to yourself, I celebrate my partner's joy and love. Their happiness enriches our relationship. Take another big deep breath in, filling up with this light. A nice big exhale. Feels good. You can take a stretch. Maybe roll your head.
Hey, thanks, love. That's beautiful. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate the space to have this conversation with you. Complete?
Complete.
Yay. Good night.